from Wyoming. She's been up in Interlochen, actually in Michigan, where she's been doing some studies up there and some different, and working on her sculpture and stuff. She's also been doing some teaching at the Interlochen school there. I'm going to turn this over to Jenny, and she's going to talk about her artwork a little bit and tell us about herself.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, and welcome to my world of characters. I'll tell you a little bit about how I got to this point with this work, because this isn't terribly typical for me. I'm actually trained as a ceramic artist, and I do a lot of sculptural work with ceramics. I'm a potter, and my first love in art was always drawing. So I've always done a little bit of drawing with all my work, and started to think, well, how can I make this more of my work than just the sketches in the sketchbook or designs on the sculpture. So this body of work, I think, started in about 2007, 2006. I was asked to go to the University of Missouri in Columbia, where I did my graduate work at, and I was asked back as a visiting artist, and I was meeting with some of the graduate students, and they were looking at my art, and one of the students asked me, why do you always have bits of furniture in your work? And I would have a chair, or I would have a desk, and I'd have all these clay pieces, and we'd build these environments, and there would be hints of furniture, hints of these objects. And honestly, I hadn't really thought about it, and he asked me that, and I thought, I can't tell him that I don't know why I do this. I should think about it. And so I said the first thing that came to my mind, which was, it's the closest I'm going to get to actually putting the human figure in my work. It's an essence of that. And he was asking me because he had the same issue with his work, and he was putting furniture, but he didn't know why in his work. So I've been thinking about that and thinking, okay, obviously furniture suits our bodies. It's made to hold us. It's made to, we work around it all the time. What if not only is it showing the absence and presence of the figure, what if furniture is also like us, and what does it do, like on the silly side, what does it do at night when we go to sleep, or what does it do when we leave the house, or what if you have an argument with somebody in a room and the furniture hears that and you leave, and it's not, it's great and it's silly, it's what if walls could talk, but it's also, our furniture becomes us. And I have this horrible habit of the tall floor lamps. I mean, I'd like to say it's because I'm short, but that's not even a good enough excuse. I don't reach up to turn them on, I always pull them down to me. So every single one of the lamps in my house bends. And it drives my husband crazy. And so I try to turn it to make it look like it's not bending. And then I started thinking, well, what if this lamp is bending towards me, and it's trying to help me, and it's saying it's okay, and I want to be closer, I'm going to give you more light. So I started thinking about maybe two lamps that are in love, or they're trying to tell each other something, or they're telling a secret. So that's where some of this work started. And I had an exhibition a year ago in Missouri that was, I turned the entire gallery into an apartment, and I made furniture, life-size furniture pieces. I covered everything with muslin and slip covers, and then I beaded thousands of porcelain hand-carved teeth onto those. And I was thinking about texture and the bits and pieces that are left behind. Like, what are all the bits of our DNA that we leave behind, but also what about the feeling that we leave behind, and the argument we had in the room, and the conversation, like all these bits of ourselves that we're leaving behind. And with that show, it was the first time I had shown drawings with that. And this piece was one of the ones in that show. They were all large pieces, and this is the only one left that I have in this exhibition. But I had a really interesting conversation during that gallery talk about this piece, because I feel like I shouldn't talk a whole lot about these pieces. They each have a little story, and the title pretty much is telling you what's going on, or what the context of it is. But I did realize that just because I see it one way doesn't mean that everybody else does. So this one, Keeping Neighbor, I won't tell you what I think, because I guess there's several different ways to look at this, which I think is exciting, but there are different stories in those. So the large pieces were starting to feel cumbersome and maybe just too obvious that they're our size. And so I was working on these smaller, these little, Narcissus was one of the first ones with the little furniture piece having a conversation. And I go back and forth on what works better in a drawing format and what works better with the welded pieces. I love welding like this because I see it as drawing. It's drawing in space, and it's really interesting to me to be able to turn something around and walk around it or see it in a different angle. You know, like lovers, the two lamps that are, I know they're waxed in place, but if you turn them around, all of a sudden they're not so excited about each other. And I had another one of the early ones I did was dancers, and it was two lamps that are dancing, and depending on how you turn them, they almost look like they're fighting and they're trying to pull apart really quickly. So it's those little things in our mannerisms and how we behave around each other, but also how our furniture behaves. When I left my office at Interlochen yesterday, I had 2 chairs in my office, and I didn't realize it until I ran back to get something, that I had the chairs facing each other, which there's no reason because it's only me in my office, and there's another chair in there in case I'm meeting with a student. But I left them like that so that they wouldn't be lonely and they could talk to each other while I was gone. I'm trying to think about these chairs. I mean, one's on wheels, so I guess it can move around. And there's one of the pieces in here has, maybe over in that corner, the one, some things should not have wheels. And that one too has a little chair with wheels. Can be go yet is the little girl chair that's sitting there. She's, come on, Mom, you've been talking to these people forever. I want to go. And she's on wheels. She's trying out some fun things. And then there's some things should not have wheels. I mean, you don't want wheels on your ladder. So I like the idea of furniture that, we're used to furniture. We're used to things working for us, but maybe suddenly it's not working. Like it has wheels, or what was the other one I was thinking of? Like even the hide and seek, the little park scene, thinking about, we don't always know what our profiles are, how much space we're taking up, or how we fit in with our context. And I love the thought of these little pieces of furniture playing hide and seek in a park, and they have no idea that they're not hiding well. We can see them. But maybe there are some that are actually hidden in there, and they won't get found as quickly. So a lot of it's thinking about what I see daily. Hide and seek also directly references the high schoolers that I've been teaching, because I can see you. I can see what you're doing right now, and that's totally inappropriate. So it's a lot of that. I mean, class photo is typical classroom. Sadly, there's got the coat rack teacher. There's the class clown. Here's the pudgy table. There's the chair that's too cool for school, and there's the gangly, skinny, awkward kids. So it's a lot of just conversations with people that then turn into conversations that happen on paper with the drawings. So that's a little bit about where I'm coming from. Do you have questions about?
Well, I have something to ask you about. What are your influences? We've got a lot of students in here, so they probably like to know, who influenced you over the periods of your artwork?
Okay. That's always a good question. I'm so bad at pulling out those names.
Well, I know you pretty well.
I know you
So
well.
Andy Goldsworthy, I know, is somebody that you and I have talked about.
Right.
And you have videos at your home. That's how I got to know Andy Goldsworthy. So maybe that might be a starting point, I guess.
That's a good place to start. I did enjoy getting into Andy Goldsworthy's work because I like how there's a slow and deliberate method in his work, and you might not always see how it's coming together, but then suddenly it does. And he's using objects around him in nature to create a line or a visual path. And I'm really interested. This show is different for me, partly because they're all very new drawings and sculpture, but this is one of the first shows I've done in quite a while that isn't a site-specific installation. And it was refreshing to me to be able to put everything in a box and ship it and not have to have a 3 or 4 day or 5 day installation or send crazy instructions for how to put it together. So I guess what I'm saying with that is typically I'm influenced with a space and how I feel people are going to interact in there. And I feel like Amy Goldsworthy's work especially may or may not be interactive with people, which is something that's really interesting. I like the things that maybe people don't notice. Maybe you don't notice it right away, or you didn't notice that your furniture is playing a game. They're playing, you know, like the Ouija board in the basement in the middle of the night. Maybe you didn't notice that. And maybe it's not something that everybody needs to see. And I like that temporary part of it. Let's see, Kiki Smith is somebody that I look at a lot. Rachel Whiteread. Rachel Whiteread's pieces are really inspiring to me because at least some of her work is about the absence and the inside of something. So she'll take like an old building and do a concrete cast of the entire inside of that space, and then the building is taken away. So you have this inside space, and that's an area that we don't really think about. We don't think about, you know, the inside of this room. We think about what is defining it, like the walls and the pedestals and people and art, but what about that other space? And so I'm thinking a lot about absences with these works, and there could be a figure or there could not be. And like I said, I'm a ceramic artist, but I have a love-hate relationship with clay, and I tend to use clay like it's other materials. And this is really weird for me too, not to have any clay in the show, but at the same time, I would use clay like I would metal, or I would use clay like I do fabric, or I would use fabric in with the clay, or I would put metal into the clay and fire it in the kiln. So all materials seem to be very much the same for me.